Have you joined? Morning, Quentin.
I'm in mute. Sorry, we've been talking in mute. How are you?
Hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you properly.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. I think it's better with the earphone. The sound cool.
There's a bit There's an echo somewhere. Morning, Lucy.
Good morning, Eugene. How are you?
Not too bad. Good to see you.
Same
Hi,
here.
Lucy.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good.
Excellent.
Great to connect.
Same here, thank you.
Quentin, where are you located?
I'm located in Nairobi.
Okay. How is Nairobi?
So I'm looking at the sky, trying to see the weather. Sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's warm. It looks like it doesn't want to decide which side of the weather that it wants to stand in. But hopefully we are heading into the warmer days. So we shall see. But today, for instance, is pretty much chilly.
Oh, okay. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Eugene. So I guess you're in the UK, right?
Yes, I'm in the UK
Okay.
at the moment.
And how is the weather treating you guys?
Well, you know, UK weather, you can have all season in one day.
That's one I can guarantee you that.
In the morning it was a bit sunny and now it's raining. You don't know, let alone how is it going to be.
And you, Lucy, which corner of the world are you in?
Well, actually, I'm in Ghana, but I was born in Kenya.
Very interesting. The world is so small.
The world is small, but I'm in Ghana. I'm in Accra,
Okay.
Ghana.
That's
And sorry?
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, we're moving towards the end of the rainy season, going into the dry season. But it's beautiful. The weather is beautiful. It's normal between 28 to 32 degrees daily, and the sun is not too hot. So it's very pleasant weather.
Great to hear that. I got the chance to discover Accra the first time last year during the Alliance for Green Revolution Forum.
I see.
Alte Africa, and Daniel is on the line, so I better say it the right way.
Yeah.
Africa, I think it's yes, Africa Green Revolution Forum, indeed. So yeah, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed Accra, even if it was for a few days. I think it was for 5 days.
Yes,
Thank you.
I think Ghana is one of the countries that is making headline across Africa.
Definitely.
With the year of return and so many amazing things.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Just one minute or two, and then
we look at.
Sorry?
Pardon?
Just 1 minute or two. I'm just waiting for Michael to join in, and then.
Oh, hello, I'm here.
Oh, you are there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, okay. We go, everyone.
So I can
Hello,
see.
everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, very well. Nice to see you, Quinton.
Hello.
Nice to see you too, Daniel.
Nice.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So I think in the interest of time, probably we can just kick off. And let me just share my screen. So welcome everyone to this SSG Agri Forum. I hope you can see my screen.
I can, yes, thanks.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
So welcome to our SSG Agri Forum, and today we'll be looking at agro industry and the food production. The discussion will be just for 90 minutes, so we'll have panelists sharing their perspective for 60 minutes, and hopefully we'll have a Q&A and get to answer some of the questions from participants for 20 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. So we are expecting quite a good number. We had over 200 people sign up, so hopefully it's going to be exciting. So my name is Eugene. For those who doesn't know me, I'm the co-founder and the CEO for SSG Consulting, and I'm also chair for One Africa Network, which is a network that empower African professional businesses and entrepreneurs within the UK. And I'm also the CEO and the co-founder of African Business Chamber in the UK, where we champion the empowerment of the African-owned businesses, and also promoting multilateral trade between the UK and African economies. And today I'm supported by my colleague, Ruth Adam, who's a Director for Corporate Affairs and Business Development at SSG, and also a Director for One Africa Network. So just briefly for those who doesn't know about what we do at SSG, we are a global consulting firm with representation in the UK, US, Nigeria, Rwanda. We mainly provide advisory consulting and operation support across various sectors of economy, ranging from business services, trade, automotive, manufacturing, agribusiness, and the emerging market sector, mainly Africa. So we provide a suite of services. Anybody who is interested, please let us know. You can visit our website where you can find some of the work we are doing across Africa and the UK. So today's discussion is mainly, we'll be looking at African agro industry and food production, just to probably set the scene. Just to set the scene, a few key facts about African agri today. We know agri remain the bedrock of African economy for decades, and a massive social and economic footprints. And we know around 250 Africa will have a population of 2 2 billion, and that grid will be central for feeding those people. And also Africa, one of the key issues, Africa remain a net importers of food, estimated around $30 billion annually, although we have around 60% of wild and cultivated arable land. And out of some of the farmers, smallholders farmers contribute to around 80% of sub-Saharan African food supply chain and 23% of regional GDP. So there's also, Africa has, especially SS region, have great potential. If you look at it, 44 countries showed which are productive, and only 9 countries make up 60% of the total potential, with 3 countries mainly leading the way: Ethiopia, Nigeria, Tanzania, contributing half of the productivity. And we've seen in the last 30 years an increase in production of about 160, and above the global average of 100%. These are some of the figures that have been published by World Economic Forum and World Bank. Hopefully, maybe our speakers will help us to double check to make sure that the figures are still realistic. And also agri-production and food waste security, food security management remain a challenge, and the lack of advanced technology continue to affect productivity and output. With that in mind, of course, sub-Saharan Africa will need 8 times more fertilizers, 6 times more improved seeds, and 8 billion investment of basic storage, including cold chain and things like that, if it were to reach its productivity target. So today I have a few questions on the agenda, and hopefully I'm going to, our speakers will help us to answer some of these questions and share their perspective in some of the work they are doing and how they see industry is shaping, or where the future lies. And to answer this question, I'm delighted to welcome our speakers. So I'll introduce them quickly, and then probably I'll give them opportunity to share more about what they do as they answer some of the questions. So the first speaker is Michel Timmerman. Hopefully I answered it correct. I spelled it correctly. So he's the founder and managing partner of Mbuyu Capital Partners. It will be good to learn more about what Mbuyu Capital Partners does, where you're investing, what are your asset class. And secondly, we go Quinten Lukingama, who is based in Nairobi, the managing partner for JBQ Africa, Impactful Support in Agribusiness. Third, we go Daniel Njiwa, who's the head for Regional Food Trade Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. Fourth, we go Chidi Ojuku, Managing Director of Africa Project Development Center. And finally, Lucy Akwa Quinten, who's in Accra, who's a strategic advisor at African Council for Organic and Sustainable Agriculture. So just as you answer the first question, sorry, oops. So just as you answer the first question, if I start with the first speaker to introduce, to give a bit more about what they do, and also help us to answer the first question in terms of agro-industry development in Africa, where do they see the opportunities and what are the key challenges? So probably if I start with Michel, if you don't mind, you can kick off the introduction.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Okay, great, thank you. So Mbuyu Capital invests in Africa. We focus primarily on private equity investment. We manage money for institutional investors in mostly in the UK and Europe. And what we seek to bring is to Africa is that capital, that long-term investment capital from pension funds and other large investors, to really to benefit Africa from that capital commitment, and for our investors to provide attractive financial returns, but also to deliver clear impact in Africa, and in the case of agribusiness, in terms of job creation, income enhancement, especially for smaller farmers, as well as improved food security. So we would typically invest anything between $1 and $10 million into companies. Our main the main sectors we look at are agribusiness, non-bank financial services, and logistics and distribution. And actually, both logistics and distribution and non-bank financial services are important to the agri sector, because things like warehousing, there are a lot of opportunities in areas like warehousing and storage, as well as the provision of credit for the agri supply chain. So agriculture really allows us to bring together those three sectors. Examples of investments we've made is a large fertilizer company in southern Africa, which basically buys the constituents and has fertilizer production plants in Mozambique and in Malawi and Zimbabwe. It has the logistics and distribution infrastructure in those countries to basically supply both small farmers as well as large estates with generally sort of tailor-made fertilizer for their particular needs. It's also a big supplier to government programs. So that's one example of an investment we've made and actually exited last year. Another investment example is another company in Southern Africa, which provides which is an equipment dealership, but also provides agricultural contracting services to again, to small farmers, but also large commercial farms. And clearly, if you install proper irrigation and as well as irrigation, land preparation, and so on, all of that helps to increase yields. So we see the opportunities in Africa being both the benefiting Africa, but also in terms of jobs and food security, but also clearly investors from making returns on well-managed projects.
In terms of, while I'm still with you, in terms of as a foreign investor in Africa, what has been the key barriers or challenges that you've come across, and what has been the best way or the best practice you've navigated some of those challenges?
I think there are many investment opportunities. The challenge, there are a few challenges. One is how long it actually takes to go from an idea or maybe a conversation with a business to actually creating an investment opportunity where you can put the money in. And then the second point is, once you've put the money in, how tough the execution side is. So I mean, as another example, actually, I started an SME focused business which provides equipment leasing in Tanzania back in 2005. And that's now grown. It's got 60 staff, offices around the country. But actually, but that is illustrated very clearly how tough it is to get a business moving and organized, because it is difficult to sort of access services like good quality IT services, but also you have the challenges of the local tax authorities and local government and regulation and yeah, just the time it takes to get sort of approvals. So from that point of view, there's a lot of friction once you're invested in terms of getting businesses to perform well and grow quickly.
So common challenges we see in other sectors, decision making or policy making, tax regulation, and all those are the main ones. How about climate? I know recently we had the issue with the climate change in Southern Africa, around Mozambique, and we've been talking about climate resilience. Is this something you've come across, and have you been affected?
So on the financing side, in these things, I mean, yes, you are sort of. We have been affected indirectly because the agriculture sector is a large sector where we provide finance, and if maize yields are down, either for reasons of locusts or otherwise rains, absence of rains or too much rain, then clearly the farmer's ability and willingness to start to invest in their business by, say, buying tractors goes down. Similarly, if you're doing agricultural contracting and the rains take too long or it's too wet, then that's a challenge as well, because you can't actually do the business and do the field preparation. So I would say anything to do, any business that even touches agriculture is very affected by climate change.
Yeah. Thanks, Michel. We'll come back to you for more questions, but let me go to our next speaker, Quentin. Quentin, if you can also give a quick brief what you do and also help to answer the first question in terms of where do you see opportunities, lies, and what are some of the challenges, and if you can also touch a bit on the current locust crisis. I know it has gone, people are not talking about it because of COVID-19, but it has been a challenge in East Africa.
Thank you very much, Eugene, and thank you for SSCG to invite me and be in a position to represent JBQ Africa. So JBQ Africa is an impactful agri advisory firm, as you mentioned, Eugene. Our goal is to contribute to social transformation of Africa. And how do we do that? Is through the agribusiness sector, and especially bridging the knowledge gap when it comes to value chain building. In a nutshell, if there's a takeaway from these discussions for our different attendees, JBQ Africa is an agribusiness value chain builder. That's what we do. And that's what we want to promote in terms of making sure that end-to-end our different stakeholders within the agribusiness sector are talking with each other and doing business with each other. And how do we do that? We provide consultancy support when it comes to strategic design. That's one. Number two, we implement those strategies. We don't only design, but we implement them. And number three, we offer, I would say, financial advisory support. So that's the different elements we do. So I'm happy to have some of our customers and potential customers on the panel. So we've been notably working with Daniel and Agra to build some of the value chains in Southern Africa. So we've been tasked to do that, and we are basically starting that assignment. And that basically to move goods from smallholder farmers to big off-takers. Agra has done tremendous work in terms of supporting different smallholder farmers in Africa, and the target is to reach 30 million smallholder farmers, and we are proud and blessed to be part of that initiative. We also support investors like Michael and his fund, Buyu Capital. We've notably supported No Fund, which is a development finance institution in terms of operational due diligence into large scale and processing activities in Tanzania, for instance, a more than $30 million transaction. And we also support, I would say, corporates operating within the agribusiness space, especially when it comes to setting up the right structures to promote doing business, selling their goods, but also working with the suppliers who could be smallholder farmers or aggregators. So that's in a nutshell what we do. Now, coming back to the different opportunities and challenges we foresee in the agribusiness space, I will say, starting with the opportunities, we keep talking about food security, and most of the people will think that that's a problem, but it's also an opportunity, I would say. When we think about the food business in Africa. Currently, the food business is at 300 billion USD on the continent and projected to be in the next 10 years at $1 trillion, right? Those are the figures from World Bank Group. So you can imagine how much money that could be for any person wanting to venture into the agribusiness space and do business all throughout the value chain. So those are the opportunities, as the president of African Development Bank has been saying. The next billionaires will come from the agribusiness space. And as a matter of fact, the wealthiest African, Dangote, has made his money in the agribusiness space. I would say those are the opportunities, but as any sector with opportunities, it comes with its own challenges. The first one is the one you've mentioned in terms of not being in a position as of yet to feed ourselves. As you said, the import bill is above $30 billion. And yet we can produce most of the food locally, as you said, because we have 60% of arable land unexploited, which worldwide unexploited, which are sitting in Africa. The other challenge is that we are dealing with smallholder farmers. If we look into the rest of the world, we'll see most of the other places have gone through green revolutions, notably through large-scale farming. We talk about Brazil, China, and other countries. So Africa needs to reinvent itself and try to find its own model, because the large-scale farming in Africa will be very difficult to achieve, as we are sitting on small size arable lands, and as an average, we're dealing with 2 acres per smallholder farmer. So the idea is really how to think through and basically design our own model of working with smallholder farmers, getting them aggregated, and making sure that we can reach the scale necessary now to feed the rest of the players within the value chains when we talk about aggregators, food processors, distributors, and retail. So different initiatives are ongoing, and we truly believe they could be supported by a blended solution from the private sector, civil society, and public sector. Notably, AGRA is playing a strong role in that angle, trying to bring the right players around the table, value chain builders, financiers, governments, to work hand in hand together in order to support the smallholder farmers and get their produce going through the full pipeline of the value chain and reaching the market. Yeah. So the other challenge is, I would say, better agribusiness husbandry in terms of supporting the smallholder farmers to achieve the highest yield they can in order to reach that green revolution, which is yet to come on the continent. And I would say now the final challenge, at least on our side, is really the route to market, which we are struggling with, especially getting those products from the smallholder farmers to market. Once those different challenges will be met, we will surely be close to a green revolution on our continent. So you asked me also to answer the issue when it comes to the locusts. Indeed, it's one of the main challenges East Africa has been going through, and it's mainly because of climate change, as you've been mentioning. As I would say, this side of the earth has been getting warmer and now alternating with heavy rains. That has helped a wave of locusts leaving basically the Middle East, getting into Eastern Africa and spreading into our East African region. So those are the kind of challenges we are going through in terms of climate resilience. So that's why when we talk about agribusiness and the challenges we're going through, it's very important to tackle them in a holistic manner and trying to see how we can basically mitigate those weather challenges, because they will definitely affect a lot when it comes to the agribusiness space, as Michael has been mentioning. Over to you, Eugene.
Thank you, Quinton, for that extensive introduction and breaking down some of the opportunities and challenges. I'll come back to you later in terms of routes to market, because we tend to see quite a lot of food being produced in Africa for export. while not focusing on the creating local market. But let me go to Daniel. Daniel, if you also can introduce yourself and give us a bit brief in terms of what AGRA has been doing and what you're doing in terms of green revolution. I think Quentin just highlighted it as one of the key challenge, and I believe you have a solution to that. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
good to be on the panel with all of you here, and nice to see you again. I mean, Quinten, we have just struck a new relationship with JBQ Africa as a program in AGRA, but also I think I'm happy to and delighted to see other partners on the call today. I guess AGRA doesn't need much introduction. I believe that we all know about AGRA and our our flagship convening, which is the Africa Green Revolution Forum, which just ended a few days ago. But I think briefly, when we talk about AGRA, we're looking at an African-led institution that is farmer-centered and that is partnership-driven. And farmer-centered because everything that we do, we want to benefit our smallholder farmers. We recognize the important role they are playing in the region, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa region in particular. You have given us and shared statistics on how much food is produced by small farmers, and really the role of small businesses in agriculture and pushing food through the supply chain. So everything we do in AGRA is aimed to benefit those. And our approaches in AGRA is market system led, and we start to engage really at the level of inputs, for example, provision and availability and access of seed, fertilizers, and how markets operate at that level, to what extent farmers are accessing these products to improve productivity, address the food security issues and hunger, but also increase income. And then we take a notch higher, we go up into the market, output market space, where we also help, organize and structure relationships between these small farmers and businesses that are operating in those ecosystems. We have a very popular model that we promote, which is called consortia, whereby we go in a geographical area and encourage, partners, both private sector, governments, NGOs and civil society to come together and look at the agriculture challenges in that space and work together to develop solutions that help uplift farmers in terms of access to inputs and as well as access to markets. Above everything else, we are, quite well known for, our role in engaging, at the political level or policy level, engaging partners. Like I mentioned, we are partnership driven. So we believe that our role is mostly, catalytic. Therefore, we leverage other people or other partners and other stakeholders' roles in various sectors, but also engaging government and supporting a government-led initiative under the broader framework of the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program. So when we go into a space, we go into a geography or a country. Right now, we work in about 14 countries in East, West, and Southern Africa. Our approach is always, to engage government at that level and understand what their needs are, the direction they would like to take, and help, shape that whole process and bring in the required partners that will help push that agenda forward. I particularly, in the broader part of AGRA, I head a regional food trade program, which is currently being funded by the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office of the UK government for the next 5 years. Our program is one component of the bigger, agenda of AGRA, and we are looking at, supporting regional food trade and resilience. And the aim is to, see how do we bring farmers or small farmers participate in regional value chains to contribute to regional food security, as well as income growth. And the key words in our program are inclusivity, which means we like the small, we like the women, we like the disadvantaged to be able to be looked into these value chains. But also we are looking at food security as regional food security, and I underline regional, because I mean, COVID is also a good example now that we have seen really the importance of relying and depending on each other as countries in terms of access to food. And I like the way you introduced the subject, because you brought out a very important statistic, which is about $30 million of food imports annually coming into Africa. And I think that's really a very conservative number. Others are actually, estimating it's above 70 billion today, and probably towards 100 billion in the next couple of years. So really, this can be looked at as both a challenge, but also as an opportunity for African farmers, for African businesses, to look at, how do we get a piece of this pie? We've been involved in agriculture. We have all of these, resources in Africa to produce, and the productivity is increasing, and talking to issues about, opportunities that are there. How can we, take up this as an opportunity and then come in and benefit the region? But just to step into the opportunity space that you mentioned, and perhaps further into challenges, I like to look at, trends. What are the trends that we're seeing so far? And you alluded to some of these earlier, including population that is increasing, but also we've noted that average incomes generally are going up in Africa. And this is affecting actually demand for food, and not only, just basic food, even, high value food, processed, sometimes even healthy, diets. And these are quite high value products that our people are looking at. Looking at other trends, including FDI flows. I mean, there's a lot of money coming through in the sector. And then we're looking at the political landscape, even it's getting much more stable generally in Africa. And these are all parameters or conditions that really create space for more opportunities, some of which that Quinten alluded to, including, the wide market that we have, but also in agriculture. What we're seeing as Agra is that most of the products that we are known for, that we produce in Africa, we actually, quite competitive at the domestic level, and maybe even at the regional level. And that's an opportunity. Although really we have challenges maybe to, go into the international market in terms of competitiveness, but at the neighbor basis, at a domestic level basis, most of these products, the staples, the cereals, we are really competitive, and we could build on that. COVID is teaching us about short supply chains. Let's leverage that. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which has just been launched. This also helps us open up the markets, and really this is an opportunity as well. So we are seeing really good things happen. Digitalization also is one of them. So quickly stepping into the challenges, and I don't want to repeat what Quinten mentioned about climate change and locusts and all of this, but we as Agra, we also look at, the role of policy and regulation, especially policy predictability in the markets. And I think this is a factor that really impacts the level at which our private sector will participate. This impacts the level at which our farmers will make decisions on where to invest. And these are spaces that we are pretty much well known for as Agra, because we bring, all of these partners together in terms of convenings. The AGRF is an example. The Regional Food Trade Coalition, which has just been launched, is another example. This is a platform that allows us to discuss these policy and regulatory issues and try to create really a level playing field. I like to end with 2 points. One is some of these challenges also include high levels of informality and limited structured markets. And this is partly the work that we're doing with JBQ. Trying to bring those small farmers, those small businesses that operate in the shadows informally into proper and well-structured, value chains where we're able really to monitor them and provide the necessary support and capacities. High levels of informality really doesn't help anyone. But if we encourage them, if we give them the opportunity to operate in these spaces, really we're going to be benefiting the whole ecosystem. I like to stop there, but thanks again, and over to you.
Thanks, Daniel. Good silent point. And one of the key things you highlighted is policy predictability and, of course, conducive. We've seen where poor policy have undermined the industry, like in Nigeria, where some of the policy executed or some of the policy that continuously changed over time has affected the farmers, the industry. Probably, let me go to Chidi also to give us his point of view, and I'm sure he's very close to Nigerian landscape. You might share some of the challenges and opportunity within the Nigerian market, because I know it's a big market also with many opportunities. Chidi, how is this situation from your side? Do you agree with Quentin and Michael and Daniel in terms of some of the key things highlighted?
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. Let me start by thanking you for getting me involved in this discussion. For those of you who don't know me, I worked 21 years at African Development Bank, and I retired as Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry just 2 years ago. I believed in those years I may have crossed lines with some of you in the various countries that we worked. As Director at ADB, I think our major focus was providing public financing for agricultural development across the African continent. However, as I said 2 years ago, I retired and I returned to Abuja and Nigeria, my country, and we set up the Africa Projects Development Center here in Abuja. Even though we're in Abuja, we have mandate across Africa. So what do we do, and why is this center important to this type of discussion? Our focus is on youth. We try to empower young people to go into agriculture as a business. Listening to colleagues from Agra and what he says about inclusiveness, I think that's where youth come in. As some of you have alluded to African agriculture, I don't need to repeat what most of you have said. But the important issue here is that we are having an aging farming population in Nigeria, probably across Africa. The average age of farmers is about 60 years. And most of these farmers are in the informal subsistence sector, and usually not connected to technology, and they still use old practices. If we have time to look at some of the statistics, you will see that our productivity is less than 10% of what it should be, what the best practice should be, because of the nature of agriculture that we practice in Africa. And because of the nature of who are involved, who are those in today's agriculture. I think that's where youth come in, if given the opportunity. We see African youth as the driving force for agricultural transformation in this country. But the question, as most of you would ask, is how do we get this done? How do we empower them? Is the education they acquired in universities and other institutions enough? And where are these youths? So experience across Africa is that most of these young people, when they graduate, they migrate to the cities. And of course, they are populating the cities. Also cause its own problems. Now you have what we call urban poverty. You know, the urban areas are getting poorer as a result of high unemployment following this migration of young people who don't have jobs or who thought that jobs are in the cities, but they're disappointed. And you see about 12 million young people chasing about 3 million jobs annually in this country. And we don't seem to think too much about these people, even though they're the potential. When we talk about 1 trillion annual food value in the next 10 years, it is not these current subsistence farmers that will drive that level of revenue. So we need to bring young people in. This is what has driven us, myself and my colleagues, especially those who retired from various institutions. We put our heads together to find a niche. And that niche is the youth. How do we support them? How do we encourage them? So most of these youth, as I said, are in the urban areas. And it will be difficult without serious incentive to take them back to the rural areas. But this could be done in a process. So we felt that, why don't you take agriculture to them in the cities? So we started what we call urban farming. So we set up a center here where we do incubation of young people in agribusiness end to end. We take them from showing them how to produce the various commodities, how to process them, how to market them. We try to link them to finance after their training. We've entered into some collaboration with a number of banks here in Nigeria who have agreed to have what we call structured inclusive finance for the youth, because they will not be very competitive in the financial markets unless you have something that is targeted and is structured to give them some incentives. So this is essentially what we're doing here in Nigeria. But as I say, we are working with other partners like the African Agribusiness Incubation Network, to also spread to other areas and other countries. I think we're also trying to have some collaboration with AGRA on how to also use young people as village extension advisors to also penetrate the rural farmers who, if left on their own minds, continue in the traditional way of farming. What is important here is that the agriculture of the future cannot be sustained on current levels of productivity. And that is where technology comes in. Urban farming is purely technology-based because, one, there's not enough land space, so whatever land that is available will be highly maximized in terms of using various technologies. I believe in Kenya, where some of these technologies are more advanced, you have hydroponics, you have aquaponics, all this, so on and so forth. We have greenhouses to produce vegetables, and we have small poultry businesses, which, one, these youths don't have enough resources, so there is no need to introduce them to scales that are beyond them. So you have to package within an optimum level of productivity and profit for them to be incentivized. Secondly, as I said, there's no land, there's not much land in the cities. So you have to look for pockets of land, including backyards where they live, and set up agricultural activities in those pockets of land. And of course, often we talk about finance. I'm happy to hear about the availability of finance on the African continent, but there is a difference between availability and access. Of course, there is a lot of money coming in, but this money is not available to those who need it, which means there is a problem between how finance is structured in such a way that not only large farmers, but small farmers and youths can have access to finance. I think this is one area that we are trying to play a role by bridging the discussions between youths and financial institutions to be able to look at structured finance, structured inclusive and innovative finance that are accessible. Okay? As most of you are aware, the Maputo and the Malabo declarations and all that, the government, the public sector is not meeting up with providing finance. So agriculture in future will be largely driven by the private sector. And this is where most of this finance is. The banks have a lot of liquidity, in excess of 800 billion, which they're not able to lend. They're not able to lend to agriculture, so to say. You have a lot of other funds coming in from various funds, as we have mentioned. And you have what we call sovereign wealth fund, pension funds. All these are available, but they are not available to agriculture. So the question is, how do we convert some of these resources, either from the banks or these sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, and even diaspora resources, to be able to use part of them to support, to make available to who need them in agriculture. And then talking about other constraints, you talk about Nigeria specifically. I believe that is also applicable in other African countries. We still have what we call infrastructure gap. Energy is still a problem. Without energy, agro industry is going nowhere. Access to energy is still very much limited. I think that's where public investment will come in. Roads and water are also important constraints that need to be addressed if African agriculture needs to move forward. Without repeating what our colleague in AGRA has said, of course, policy enablement is quite key. The type of incentives, sometimes agriculture suffers what I may call a biased treatment in terms of taxation and in terms of incentives. Incentives tend to go to more industrial areas, industrial sectors than agricultural sector. So how do we get policies around that will also incentivize farmers to be able to do more? I believe in the process of the discussion, I would come in again to discuss some of the issues that you have raised for today's topic. So let's stop here, unless you have other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for that expanded introduction and touching some critical key areas. If I go to Lucy, Lucy, I know you've been involved in quite a lot of activity in Ghana, and Ghana farming is quite well advanced, and you're doing quite amazing work. What's your thought on your side? Do you agree on some of the key challenges? And I know if you can touch on the key issue also on food commodity, especially there's a lot of tension around the cocoa farming and the issue of pricing and the exploitation around making sure that the farmers are getting fair price for the commodity. What the government is doing about it, and I know it's on high agenda.
Thank you very much. And Eugene, I really appreciate being part of this discussion, because I'm the only woman, so I feel so special among these giants. So I feel very special, and I feel like I'm Mother Africa. So thank you for this opportunity. Yes, there's a lot going on in the agribusiness space in Africa, and being in Ghana and the Secretariat for the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, it's something special. It's a special role, and personally, I see it as a responsibility to merge the different actors in the agribusiness value chain in Africa in such a way that there's a win-win solution for everybody, so that the financiers in Africa and beyond see the continental trade and Ghana as a pivotal space where they can leverage on our expertise, being central to everything that is happening in the agribusiness space. So let me talk about the different roles I play in different organizations and narrow it down to the opportunities have been mentioned, but I'll narrow it down to specific facets, and we'll take it from there. So in the African Council for Sustainable Agriculture and for Sustainable Organic Agriculture, what I do is I'm a technical expert, and I provide hands-on solutions and technical content for the organizations in such a way that the path is charted in a way to meet real needs of smallholder farmers and other actors such as the aggregators and the processors in the agribusiness value chain. But I perform other roles in other organizations. For example, I'm part of the West African Chamber of Agribusiness and the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. And with these different associations, they bring together different actors in the agribusiness value chain in Ghana and in West Africa. So you would find commodity traders, you would find farmers, you would find processors, and you would find even financial institutions being part of the entire organization, so as to enhance the agribusiness space. So this is what I do in agribusiness, the West African Chamber of Commerce, West African Chamber of Agribusiness, and in the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. I also work with MSMEs in the agribusiness space. So I work with, for example, AgriPool. AgriPool does digital farming. That is, digital farming is owning a farm in Ghana and being able to manage it anywhere in the world. So you would own a farm and you'd be able to look at it through Google Earth and different tools, so that you are part of the process, even though you're remotely away from your farm. So that's what I do at AgriPool. I'm a strategic advisor, and I help them in terms of accessing finance and in other technical details. And there's DigiX. DigiX provides digital extension services for smallholder farmers and commercial farmers. So it's a digital service. So it runs from drones and other ICT tools to be able to manage your farm in terms of knowing the weather, knowing when to, the different stages of the cropping cycle, what to do. So that is what Digitex does. And apart from this, I'm part of the Agribusiness Value Chain Federation as a founder, and I bring together all the other agribusinesses in Ghana. So I am part of the African Women in Agribusiness, that's in Ghana, and other agribusiness organizations. And what we do is I provide a synergy between different actors along the value chain. At the same time, with our experience in smallholder farming activities, in terms of production activities, there's a bit of experience in farmer cooperatives in terms of forming cooperatives and managing cooperatives and being able to access funds for cooperatives. That is a big role. The responsibility is huge, but because of the kind of relationship I have with the smallholder farmers in terms of letting them own what you bring to them and letting them be part of the entire process. This is, I won't say easy, but it's something that is workable with other partners. So my roles span from agri-tech, access to finance, MSME development, right through to synergy in terms of networking within the agribusiness space. And in all of this, the smallholder farmer is the focus. And as my senior colleague said, there is funds available, but is it accessible to the smallholder farmer? And furthermore, is it accessible to the female smallholder farmer or the youth in smallholder farming? Is it accessible? And that's what we have to ask. Because most financial institutions or funders want to see something want to see past experience and what you have to prove yourself before you are able to access finance. And if on the other side, you don't have to really prove yourself, it's a competition and it's the one-off thing that's can, I won't say staged, but it's controlled. So the real circumstances surrounding MSME development and agribusiness are not actually felt, because it's a controlled environment whereby there's a competition and the startup wins and it's controlled. But it's a whole new ball game out there. It's a whole new ball game out there. The smallholder farmer isn't able to access finance, and even if he accesses finance, he defaults because there are several pressures around his finances. He has to take care of his family, and even in these COVID times, he definitely will default because market access is poor. The lockdowns brought a lot of challenges into market access. So if the farmer went in for a loan and there was a lockdown and he wasn't able to sell his produce and he was forced to sell his produce under prices which were not sustainable, how would he be able to pay for the loans? And how would he be able to take care of his family's education and even just feed his family in these COVID times? So we have to rethink the whole agri-financing structure in terms of bringing up innovative strategies such as matching grants and have room for the smallholders farmers' real life circumstance. So we shouldn't assume too much. We should be on the ground and be constantly in touch with the farmer to know, because the trends do change. The trends that happened in 2019 are different from 2020 because of the COVID and several other factors. So we have to be in touch with the farmers in such a way that we are responsive towards their day-to-day needs, and not just historical needs that we think we know of. You understand? And we, in the same way, financiers or other actors have to know the real picture, so that expectations are set in an equilibrium and not higher than what is going to happen in practice.
Rusi, perhaps in terms of the finance structure issues, in a minute, Michael will try to help us to break down. If you can touch quickly on the cocoa issue, how we can support farmers to add value to make sure they get fair price. How do you see it? Because it's an issue that has been not just in the cocoa. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, so if you
I
can
think
touch
with that,
on it.
engaging the farmers, farmer groups and individual farmers, not just the groups, but individual face-to-face interviews would be better, because I cannot say prescribe or say this works for everybody. Each farmer has its unique ecosystem. So we have to engage these farmers more to know whether it's what is being put out there is what is happening. And we have to understand their circumstances better. Yes, the scales are fidgeted with when weighing their sacks and all that. We know of all these horror stories, and they don't get enough income from what they are doing. And most of these cocoa farmers are old, in their 60s and beyond. But we have to know the real circumstances of what they are faced with. The youth are not attracted to farming enough because they see the circumstances of cocoa farming enough, because they see the circumstances of their parents and their grandparents, and they want more because they see things happening on social media. So we have to be real with the youth in the rural areas. We have to be real with the farmers in the cocoa producing areas in terms of how they're being cheated, or in quotes, or whether what we are prescribing for them actually works for them. So that community engagement should be deep, and it should involve not only the cocoa farmers within their community, but the entire community hierarchy. So all opinion leaders, all traditional rulers, all farmer associations.
Yeah, not so to cut you short, but it's a very broad area, because they also have to engage commodity traders to make sure the products.
Exactly.
So it's a quite broad.
Exactly.
But in the interest of time, probably, if you don't mind, if I go to Michael, I think three things that have come out is, how can we scale up agri in Africa and add value in the downstream and midstream? And especially there's an issue of structured finance, and it's been raised quite a lot of times that it's not available. They can't see it. They hear it's coming, it's somewhere, there's a lot of money, but they don't see it. Second, what's your thought on perspective? As an investor, I know data is important in decision making. Nobody has mentioned about data in terms of agribusiness, and if this issue continue to come over time in terms of availability of data to support decision making, planning, food security. What's your perspective as a foreign investor who is always relying on this data to make informed decision? And where is this money that should they continue to talk about? And if you can touch a bit of how can we enhance inclusive finance and gender lensing?
Thank you. That's those are a lot of topics, and but I'll keep it short and give other people the opportunity to speak as well, of course. So I guess a couple of maybe a couple of comments in firstly in the area of financing for agriculture. So from I guess when we look at financing and look at where there are return opportunities, the areas which need finance, but I think are very tough to finance, partly because people have lost a lot of money in it, is in primary agriculture. And people have lost money in primary agriculture in many different ways. And you could have a talk for an hour about how you can manage to lose money, but weather is an important aspect. But also, I think underlying all of that is that it's necessary to invest in infrastructure for primary agriculture, particularly when it comes to the sort of increasing volatility through climate change. So you need irrigation to manage the periods of drought. You need proper drainage to manage the period, to keep the fields dry during periods of excess rain, because if you can't get into the fields to harvest, your crops will rot, and all the money and work you've put into it will disappear. The problems with investing in infrastructure like irrigation and drainage is it's expensive, and returns are very, very you need very long-term investment of capital, and returns are low. And my observation is that the foreign investors, particularly the development finance institutions, used to invest in this area, but they've been pulling back. But this is very much an area where I think government intervention would be very, very helpful, and not intervention expecting to make attractive commercial returns, but just intervention to put infrastructure in place to improve production and reliability of production. And that goes for large-scale commercial farming, but it's at least as important for small-scale farmers as well. So that's sort of one piece component which I think is important to be able to for producers to make money in agriculture. The other, I guess, observation is that, and this doesn't just apply to agriculture, a lot of the investment money coming into Africa comes from foreign investors, and a lot of that is from development finance institutions. We spend a lot of time talking to pension funds locally, particularly in East Africa, and so the institutional money in Africa is really only buying treasuries. Because they provide very attractive yields, and they're very reluctant to invest in agribusiness, or in fact even in manufacturing, for example. So I think there's an importance to explaining the attractions and benefits of investing locally in Africa by the institutional investors, and not just to rely on foreign investors. Then when it comes to financing smallholders, again, it's tough. There are things you can do, like insurance is important. So developing insurance schemes for smallholder farmers. And to your point of data, the more data that can be collected about productivity and weather and so on, the easier it will be to introduce insurance for smallholder farmers. So then, even when they have a bad year, they will still not lose everything, and they can still afford to feed their family and pay school fees and so on. So insurance is an important component to bring in. And then the other aspect is clearly to have a good and reliable market for produce. And then finally, and if there is a reliable offtake for produce, then that allows people to finance things like inputs and good quality seeds, which improves productivity. So it's difficult to pick out one area in isolation and say, well, you need to do this, it's going to solve the problem. There's a whole set of different measures that need to be taken to improve both smallholder productivity and financial security, as well as for larger farms. The one sort of way we found in Tanzania through the leasing business to help small farmers is through financing equipment, because in that case, the equipment helps to make the farmer more productive and improves their yields, and therefore produces an income which allows the farmer to pay for the equipment. And if for whatever reason that is not working out, the equipment can be returned and sold and used to finance another farmer. And so as a lender, if you want to be sustainable, you need some form of security, but you need a form of security which works out for the borrower as well as for the lender. And I'd say equipment finance is a very good way of providing at least one type of help for small farmers. And at that point, I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Michael. Let me go to Quinton quickly and Daniel in terms of access to market and creating local opportunities, because time we see most of the large farming in Africa is focused on export. And it looks like a paradox when we are importing food and we are also farming locally for export. But at the same time, there's also discussion how we can add value to local product. A good example was in Tanzania to support a client in how we can process cashew, because the government in Tanzania has blocked any export of cashew. They want it to process locally. And by processing one cashew apple, you can get around 12 products, from lubricant to cashew juice to cashew wine to cashew, everything, which creates a lot of opportunity locally. How can we harness this opportunity to create more value locally, at the same time to create more local market rather than for export, while also creating opportunity back home?
So thank you very much, Eugene. Probably to jump a little bit on the investment side, where Jishi and Michael discuss about the financing availability versus the finance accessibility. There are good points which have been raised in terms of, first, the route to market is very important, because you need to have bankable projects. So without that, it's difficult to think about any finance accessibility, because at the end of the day, if it's a loan, it needs to be repaid. If there's an investment, we need to have return on investment. I want to insist on 2 points. The first one is the one related to the knowledge gap, right, in the financing space, and both sides, from the supply and demand of the money. So the supply side of the money is all the financiers, the investors, and the rest. The demand is the companies in need of that money, or the smallholder farmers and the rest. I would say from the demand side, there is an issue when it comes to investment readiness also, to understand the different kind of investors out there, financiers out there, and what is the right money for the right project. So there is a huge gap when it comes to those promoters, SMEs, and the rest, to understand what is the financing and investment environment, and to understand what kind of product might be right for them, and how to pitch themselves to those kind of money suppliers. So that's one side. On the other side, we've also noticed that some of the investors, financiers, don't understand agribusiness. And when you don't understand, it's difficult to invest, because you always see risk left, right, and center. So there is also a need of supporting the investors, financiers, to understand better the agribusiness and how those investments can be structured properly, as Michael has been mentioning. And not forgetting that agribusiness most of the time, as Michael mentioned, needs long-term investment. And most of the time, you'll see that people, to be successful within the agribusiness space, they need to invest all throughout the value chain, almost from farming activities to market, right? So that now they can gather the returns at each and every level of the value chain. And you'll see the successful businesses in the different corners of Africa. They've been there for a while. If you talk about the Bidco in East Africa when it comes to oil processing, when it comes to the milling activities with the FMN in Nigeria, or the Dangotes and the rest, you can see that those companies have been there for a while to be able now to capture the different, I would say, value within the value chains in terms of money value. So now coming back to your question related to local markets and the rest. Coming back to the point which has been raised by Daniel and the rest of the team, we need to work together, because private sector cannot succeed alone, or public sector alone, civil society alone, without working together in order to create local markets for local produce. How? First of all, when it comes to the government side, as you've been mentioning, and probably Daniel mentioned also, we can compete sub-regionally. Some of the value chains can be competitive sub-regionally, right? When it comes to the staples, when it comes to the food security and the rest. But now, exporting now beyond some of our sub-regions, that is becoming challenging. Why? First is about infrastructure. If we don't have the right infrastructure to move goods from one point to another, even within the country, you might find out that probably it might be cheaper to eat some of the imported food in Maputo because you can get it cheaper cultivated in Nacala and moving it all the way from Nacala to Maputo because of lack of proper infrastructure, right? Some of the products are not even competitive when it comes to, for instance, the wheat business in Kenya, right? The consumption of wheat is 2.5 million into Kenya. The local production is 300,000 metric tons, but it's not very good quality of wheat because we don't have the right weather for that, right? Probably we should be focusing on things like cassava, potatoes, those kind of value chains which can be cultivated locally and can be consumed locally. And we also need that layer of protection in terms of protecting our markets vis-a-vis the import. Because some of the product might simply be cheaper to import than to produce locally. I'm gonna give the example of the sugar business in Tanzania, for instance. If you import sugar, brown sugar, from the rest of, let's say, not even going far from Southern Africa, it's cheaper than the sugar which is locally produced. So what the government has done, it has given import license to the sugar processors in Tanzania. Just 4 big players who are the only ones who are allowed to import sugar, as well they are the sugar processors. What does it do? Is that it does help those sugar processors to increase the capacity of production, knowing that the market, the local market is protected for them, right? And they will only import the sugar which they cannot produce locally, right? And the idea is by 2025, for instance, to be sugar, not to be sugar importers in Tanzania. So, right, so to be in a position to cover the deficit of sugar production. But if the local market is not protected, then let me tell you, the local sugar will still be more expensive than the imported sugar. So it's important to protect those local markets so that now the players locally can have and develop enough capacity to be able to fulfill those markets. So that's very crucial. Once now those protection from, I would say, a government level are set, infrastructure are there for now the private sector to operate. Now they'll be willing now to do those long-term investment Michael was talking about, and being able to put sizable amount of money to be able now to expect returns after 10 years, 15 years of investment within the value chain. So that's my personal views when it comes to basically enhancing the local markets versus the imports. Over to you and Daniel.
Daniel, what's your thoughts? Do you agree with Quentin and Michael point of view and perspective, or how do you see it?
No, I totally agree. And I mean, in the interest of time, I guess I'll try and make it quite brief. What I worry about the most is you know, and I'm speaking out of the knowledge that we have accumulated working with governments, and sometimes things that we try and advise governments to look at is where governments always think or often think that they need to produce everything themselves. The desire to be self-sufficient in almost any commodity. I mean, that is just impossible in an environment where we operate right now, and with trade opening up and all this. I think we really need to take a second look at exactly what do we have comparative advantage in as Tanzania, as Malawi, as Kenya, and focus on those, and not try to be, you know, a producer of everything. You have to be able to learn and exchange in terms of, you know, your trade terms with your neighbors. We produce sugar in Malawi or South Africa cheaply. We export into Tanzania, but we can import maize from Tanzania because apparently Tanzania is, you know, very competitive in maize. In fact, it could actually be trading at the global level competitively. So, you know, you should be able to know which sectors really you have to go in. But I like us to go back to three critical points that we raised earlier, and one is data. And you mentioned the issue of data, and data not only from private sector point of view, but also from government point of view. Decisions that the private sector want to make as good as decisions governments would like to make and need to make in terms of setting the, you know, right policy environment for private sector to operate in. I mean, in Agra, we are, you know, investing in that space quite a bit. Some of the initiatives that we're looking at include, you know, developing regional food balances or national food balances, where we're able to advise governments. And this time around, we're drawing from even technology, satellite imagery technology, which is allowing governments to be able to look into, you know, the next 3 months, 4 months in terms of how the production looks like and all of this. And when you bring that information together, including trade numbers, estimates of informal and formal trade, consumption and all of this, you are starting to paint a picture that then allows government to make a decision, and then that allows small farmers to make a decision on where to invest and which policies to make. You know, many a time, I mean, we've seen governments really backtracking on trade policy decisions around agriculture, food. Nigeria, I mean, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia. I mean, all of these countries have been really culprits, for lack of a better word, in terms of trade policy for agriculture products, really hurting their own local industry, including for products like maize, for products like soybeans and all of this. And if you do that in 1 or 2 years, and then there's lack of predictability as to what is the next step government going to take, the chances are the 90%, the 80% of the small farmers that produce this commodity will now try to, you know, disinvest or, you know, go out of that sector to into an, and if they keep that, they're not learning. You're not even building skills in a particular sector to allow them to be competitive over the long term. So that's a problem. The next thing is the issue of infrastructure, which has been talked about. And I mean, if we look at the statistics right now, Africa actually in agriculture trades bigger value with the rest of the world than it trades within itself. I mean, that's just an anomaly, or maybe something that we need to look at carefully. But it also, it may be historical, you know, where most of the key infrastructure pieces that have been developed in the region or in Africa were basically externally facing, globally facing, you know, taking out raw materials into the bigger market or world market. But how about we start to reverse that and look more internally? Because we have now the population, we have now the incomes. Where are these, you know, veins and arteries that feed our local cities, our local town councils with vegetables that are not going to waste, with cereals that are not going to waste, and, you know, cut on those and capitalize on these markets? And I think these are some of the things that we need to be looking at. The last point that I'd like to make is also around financing. And I had a conversation with my colleague the other day, and it's interesting actually to see that there's actually a lot of financing out there, but the channels and the ecosystem for which this finance should get to the people that need it, I mean, it's just non-existent. We talked about lack of structured systems and markets. We talk about high levels of informality. we talk about, lack of disorganization among farmers, among small businesses. All of these just create, a space where it is just too risky for any financier to come in. And I think from one of the FCDO funded programs that I was part of, a few years back, we actually were trying to hand out grants to, private sector, try to buy off some of the risk and all of this. But what we learned over a number of years was that really they don't need those handouts. What they need is you have to just guarantee them, a good supply system for their raw materials in the quality, in the quantity that they need. And the farmers also need back and forth, information on what are the specs and all of this. So you're creating a long-term relationship between the off-taker, the processor, and the suppliers, and then they are able to exercise all of this value chain governance, to guarantee money from, even commercial sources and lubricate the whole system. So really, there's quite a bit that we really need to do together, and I'll end there just to give others a chance. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Of course, you've just raised a good point that in terms of looking inward, creating local solution. And I think some of these issues, we already know the answers. For example, food waste. One day I traveled from Abuja to Jos, and I observed the amount of food that are wasted along the way because of poor access to market. Like tomato, if I had a good investment from Michael, I will just acquire some tomato processing equipment, and I create and things like eggs and so many fresh products cannot get to market because poor infrastructure. If I go to Chigi and Rusi, if you can briefly maybe say if you agree with the rest of the speakers, and also touch on the issue about how can we make agribusiness attractive to the youth. Youth is a big issue to all the government in Africa. I think the most population now in Africa, and also the big challenge to the government, is creating opportunity for unemployed youth. And also if you can try and touch, I think it's been highlighted in one of the questions, that some of these issues, the smallholder farmers has been historically addressed in Spain through cooperatives. Is there a model that can help to tackle some of these exploitation issues? What are the regulatory or checks and balance can be introduced to make sure that the traceability, the smallholder farmers are monitored and managed across the supply chain to eliminate any exploitation? Chidi, do you want to start, and then probably give to Lucy, and then we can probably just wrap up?
Okay, thank you very much. I will touch quickly on some of the issues that you've raised. Talking about wastage and things like that, I have some statistics in front of me here. Africa loses about 4 billion revenue annually as a result of post-harvest losses. So the issue of how do we deal with reduction of post-harvest losses, I think, should occupy our minds, because this is a huge loss, 4 billion annually. And of course, this ranges from cereals at 21% to roots and tubers at 54% loss, and fruits and vegetables at 66% loss. Of course, the issue of creating markets and storage facilities become very important in this type of discussion. Talking about incentives for youths to get them involved in agriculture. As I mentioned to you, this is an area that my colleagues and I are working on. There are 3 areas of incentives, especially from the public sector. One is what we'll be discussing, structured finance. Here in Nigeria, for example, the government set up, I think they are now semi-autonomous, what you call a risk-sharing facility. Because we talk about, my former boss, president of African Development Bank, used to say, a young graduate who is trying to have a startup business goes to the bank to borrow money. and he or she is being asked to bring 3 years tax clearance certificates, 3 years of bank statements, and so on and so forth, which it doesn't even have. So how do they start? So the establishment of a risk-sharing facility whereby banks are guaranteed through some level of arrangement with these institutions to buy over their risks and make resources available to young people and small farmers who be tried in other countries. I think Ghana is trying that, Liberia, I know, and a few others. So this is a very good instrument which has been introduced here in Nigeria, and I believe can also be used to support not only small farmers who don't have collateral, but also youths if we want to bring them into agribusiness. The second area of incentive which we are pushing is cost of utilities. Okay, I mentioned earlier that urban agriculture, for example, is reliant on technology, and it's also reliant on energy. You must have light to be able to do urban agriculture. Whether you're doing poultry or you're doing hydroponics or whatever you're doing that you need to pump water, energy becomes important. So cost of utility, water, energy is very high. How can public arrangements be ensured so that young people pay less in terms of utility, or giving some incentives whereby the first 1 or 2 years, they have some reduction in tariff or exemptions that will allow them stabilize before they can begin to pay full amount of utilities that they utilize. The third area is taxation. I think I alluded to it earlier. Agriculture is heavily taxed. A young person tries to start business. Before they even make, whether in Nigeria here, whether you make profit or you don't make profit, you must declare, you must pay tax. And this does not serve as an incentive for young people. So there should be some element of tax rebate, at least for the first 2 or 3 years, to enable young people to set up, establish themselves before they're being asked to pay tax. And here, if you don't pay those taxes, sometimes your business is marked for closure. So I think people like AGRA and my former institution, African Development Bank, have to do more in terms of policy engagement with various governments to be able to look at how they can apply some of these incentives. I believe in the long run, they will be better off. You know, more jobs are created, agriculture shifts from the old to the youth, and technologies are brought in. They should not be looking at what they lose today, but they should be looking at what they gain in the future. Finally, I think the issue of governance is also important. I recall when I was at the African Development Bank, we tried to give some resources to a country to set up, to improve their sugar production and then reduce the level of imports. They were spending a lot of money on importation. But due to governance issues of rent seekers and all those, they wanted to keep that import. They didn't want to, you know, a lot of big players were benefited by having that import. Okay, so they tried to kill this project. I think they actually killed it. If that fund was made up, this gap would have been filled, and these rent seekers and those who are importing this sugar would have been eliminated. And they didn't want that. Okay, so how do we put pressure on government to think about the society as a whole, rather than individuals who benefit from issues like this? I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chide. Actually, you raised a very strong point in terms of cartels in the agribusiness. It's been a big issue, especially from like sugar in Kenya to quite a lot of places. But in the interest of time, Lucy, what's your thought on those some of those issues?
I'll be as brief as possible. I think we should give every person in different demographic categories the chance to be entrepreneurs. Yes, we should focus on the youth, but what about those between 45 and 50 who want to start something new after this COVID situation? People come to me saying, everybody's saying the youth and everybody's saying women. What about we, the men who have responsibilities to pay school fees and want to do something? There's no opportunities for us. So let's give everybody the chance, women, youth, men, but everybody who wants to be an entrepreneur or wants to be an agribusiness entrepreneur, let's give them the chance, and let's have the right structures, and let's have the right information out there for financiers to be able to structure their deals to meet the exact needs of which kind of entrepreneur they want to reach out in the agribusiness value chain. So that's my message. And also, climate change is there. We have to be conscious of it. Another thing also is transport systems in Africa. It's difficult to move from Ghana to, for example, any other African country in West Africa. It's easier to go to London than to go to that African country. So let's work in improving a holistic picture. Transport systems have to be improved. General policy changes in terms of ease to do business, and we should target different demographic categories and not only the youth. Yes, the youth should be helped, but we should take into consideration men and women out there who have responsibilities and want to start something for themselves in the agribusiness value chain. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but if you don't mind 2-3 minutes, one question that we haven't covered is mainly the role of technology in food supply chain and the safety management, especially if you talk about traceability management using blockchain, AI, and the IoT. Who want to comment on that? How future technology can enhance better supply chain management and the traceability?
I can try to answer part of it. As JBQ Africa is in partnership with different tech companies like Microsoft, Cropin, eProd, and Arifu, definitely technology, or also agri-tech in particular, will help in terms of bringing more efficiency within the agribusiness value chain, more food security and visibility. I think Daniel has alluded to it, talking about the food balance sheet. Institutions like Cropin can provide such kind of capacity to different governments and different institutions, first to understand where are the regions of food production, when can we expect the food, and what could be the yield. So that's one angle, but the other angle is also in terms of food traceability, meaning where the food came from, where did it transit before it got consumed locally or exported. So such kind of technology can help in terms of having the right traceability and being in a position to feed our different growing cities, and basically also pegging it now to the smallholder farmers and knowing who are the smallholder farmers who have been able to produce that food and availing that food for the rest of the world to consume. So thank you.
Thank you, Quinton. And in addition to that, of course, this will also provide additional data we mentioned about to support decision making. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We've got quite a lot of amazing questions and discussions. We look at them and hopefully we can answer them separately. But thank you so much for your time. It's been very informative. Even me, I learned a lot. I think when the COVID-19 is over, I'll be in Africa to start my farming. Hopefully I can get some investors. I'll be in touch with Michelle, Mike. But it's been good, and we host this discussion on a quarterly basis. So we'll invite you again on our next discussion panel. Hopefully we can get time to discuss some of the issues and profile some of the solution that can help our audience. And to the audience, we hope that this discussion has been informative and you managed to get some key takeaway that it can help you to prosper in the agribusiness. So thank you so much to our speakers, Quinton, Daniel, Meiko, Chidi, Lucy. Thank you for your time, and it's been a great having you, and have a good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.